Hello, everyone. It's Jerry at the Fledge, and welcome to episode 360 of Every Damn Day. So we got 5 left after today. I think I screwed up the numbers a couple shows ago, but it's all fixed now. So 360 days in a row. It's I'm gonna miss it, and I'm struggling actually how much I'm gonna miss it. But I'm down in the sanctuary. I've got CISO's shirt on, lancing over everything. I want to give a shout out to thisent.com and the champ, Mr. Joe Walker. You know, I started writing on that Every Damn Day website today and thinking about your offer to help me summarize some of this. I think I'm in on that if you're out there watching, but I'll hook up with you soon. And I'm actually a little thrown off right now because I am so excited to get to my guest. So I don't know if I'm going to have a smooth transition or not, but I have to get you on screen. Shara, how you doing today?
I am doing great. Thank you so much for having me, Jerry.
During the prep, I get pumped up. It gives me a lot of energy on every single show. But today you got me all. I want to throw my chair back and stand up for this whole show, but I'm not going to do it.
Thank you so much.
So you want to give a shout out to anyone?
Yes, I really want to just give a shout out to my customers as well as my volunteers, especially my CSA customers that really help to sustain the farm, and to all of the farmers and the people that support me and allow me to do what I do, and kind of keep me going every damn day.
I'm going to be sharing a lot of links in a little while with how people can reach out to you and all of that. So we'll save that for a minute. I know you're excited, you're passionate about what you do, but I want to get to know you, the kid. Like, where were you born and raised? Where'd you go to school? What'd you do when you were a kid? Especially if it relates to what you're doing right now.
Okay, so my college background is very different than what I do right now. But I was born and raised in St. Lucia. My granduncle was an environmentalist. Actually, he was a TFAP, the Tropical Forestry ambassador for St. Lucia. And so I spent a lot of my youth trekking rainforests with environmentalists, biologists, and geologists, taking soil samples and stool samples and tracking animal patterns and things like that. So really had a love of the environment, and also getting introduction to the various fungi that basically, grow in the rainforest. And so there was just a lot of passion there. And so, I wanted to be an environmentalist, but my mom was like, they live a semi-nomadic life. You're good at math, go to business school. So I went to business school. I did my undergrad and my master's in finance. My first job out of college, I was a trader. Then I worked as an investment banker for large corporate banks for Chase for a while. And then I worked at Merrill Lynch as a private wealth manager. And then I was a private client group relationship manager for PNC Bank for a while. And then I met this woman in 2013 who just changed the trajectory of my life. I went to the Ohio State Fair, and there's this woman raising Berkshires, and I'd never seen a woman farmer, and she was there really just, she was amazing. I looked at her and I was like, oh my goodness, I want that. And she got me so excited. We talked a lot, and then she introduced me to the organic movement. So I got involved with the guys at OPA, met Eric Pulowski, super excited about growing local food. And so that really got me fired up. I started getting involved with farmers and kind of getting really entrenched in the movement. And that's when the dream of my farm came about. And that's where, wanting to raise Berkshires, it became a really big passion for me. And then I also love mushrooms, so I wanted to get involved in that. So I started getting involved in that as well. So that was really exciting. But, I didn't really actually start farming until end of 2016, beginning of 2017. And so, yeah.
All right. So I have a million questions. The show's going to take 3 hours to do.
Sorry.
I'm just playing around about that. I want it to take 3 hours, actually, but we don't have that. So what got you at the Ohio State Fair? Because you were in St. Lucia, then you're
Oh, I lived in Columbus because
Oh, okay.
Chase actually has a headquarters in Columbus. So when I was working I actually moved from New Hampshire because I was working in Boston for Fidelity Investments as a trader. And then I moved to Columbus to work as an investment banker for Chase. So our headquarters is in Columbus, and then we did trips to New York all the time, or to wherever our clients were to basically do meetings and handle. So I spent a lot of my time actually in the financial district in New York, but that was kind of my life for a bit.
We didn't talk about any of that during the preparation, so I'm really surprised about that background, but I'm not, and I'm going to bring it up again in a little bit as we start to get into your farm a little bit. And then, man, what a dream. I mean, there are so many kids I know that would love to be able to go around in a rainforest and do what you did.
I'm actually super grateful. I think I kind of took that for granted when I was growing up, but I'm super grateful for that because I really got to meet a lot of really cool people, because a lot of really big environmentalists came there, and so met a lot of really cool people that kind of really inspired me in terms of environmental preservation, and even what I'm doing now, and learning about agroforestry and how that works in with the pigs, and basically kind of recreating and rejuvenating the forest systems using pigs. I think that's a big thing for me, and also looking at micro remediation with the fungi development and kind of growing mushrooms. I think one of the reasons I really love growing mushrooms is it's really challenging. When I lived in Ohio, I had a koi pond, and I used to give my koi adrenaline injections. I'm all about I live care, and I think it was kind of like my little intro into my little fix into farming. So I think I always had that passion of wanting to be a farmer, and I like the science behind mushrooms. It's one of the reasons it's so exciting, as I work with other mushroom farmers with that have a collaborative mindset, and we kind of develop and we talk through ideas and things that we're doing. It's so exciting to be able to kind of get really deep into the science behind it. So that's exciting for me.
What's weird about you describing it that way? When we were talking earlier, I was thinking about the giant network that is, I don't know what it's called, but mushrooms talk to each other, fungi talks to each other, and there's kind of all these symbiotic relationships happening. And then the way you described that, and I think about the community that I think we're going to talk about. I think about biomimicry, where I try to mimic what nature does. So we look, if we've got a problem, we look at what nature does and we say, well, she's been working on it a lot longer than us. Let's just follow her. And everything that I got a billion questions for you now. I think I started with 1 million, but we multiplied it by a bunch.
You see, that's so exciting because I think you understand, because I think that at the end of the game, the big picture is wanting to change the food system, to decolonize the food system and change it and really grow the local and the slow food movement. And I think you can only do that with a collaborative mindset. And so I'm super grateful for the farmers that I have. I have a really good network of farmers in Lansing area, but then I also have my mushroom people. So Detroit mushrooms and Zazu mushrooms, in Kalamazoo, and we share ideas and we support each other, and we work on growing different strains together. So we're basically expanding our access and learning from each other, and working on growing and troubleshooting difficult strains together, so we can become better mushroom farmers. So it's really nice to have these collaborative relationships with people who have the mindset of not just making as much money as I could possibly, but really kind of changing the food system and becoming more efficient and more effective as farmers. And I think that's super, I'm very grateful for those relationships.
I'm still going to drag you back to you a little bit more, though, because I do want to say I love mushrooms. I mean, I love to eat mushrooms, but I also love them. I take photos of got to look over my shoulder because my wife's right there. But I take more photos of mushrooms than I do of my family most of the time. When I'm going walking somewhere and I see a mushroom, man, I am
Get
so
excited.
obsessed with these. All right, so you have this childhood, then you have this banking career that I think your mother kind of wanted you to do that. She made not made some decisions, but maybe flexed her influence.
Yes.
And during that time, I bet you there were some really good things. Like maybe you built some money so that you could invest in this stuff, but maybe some bad things that you're making these people richer or something. I don't know. What was that like?
It was really hard for me because, that environment is extremely competitive. And also the mindset was very, very different in mine. And so I always felt like a square peg in a round hole. It was also challenging being a woman. I never forget one time I was doing a conference. I was an investment banker for this large bank in Dubai. And, I came to the meeting and the guy says, "Oh, so when is the banker going to join us?" And I'm like, "I'm the banker." He's like, "But who's the banker in charge?" And I'm like, "I'm the banker." And I think it took me like 4 or 5 times to repeat that I was the banker. And then he goes, "Oh." So it's always challenging, because, and I think it's a function of their culture too, working with Eastern people, but hopefully when I started speaking and he saw kind of what the ideas and the things were, it kind of changed his idea. I mean, the project went well and we worked well together, but I think it was definitely a hurdle that they had to kind of get over, that I was the face of what they were doing. So, yeah.
I used to commute to Dubai every 6 weeks for 12 years. I've been there hundreds of times, and I know exactly these guys that you're talking about. I know them well. And the surprising part is that Dubai's pretty progressive as far as women in science, women in tech, women in finances, women in their leadership. So yeah, it still is still part of that culture, I guess, a little bit, that it is surprising. But things are changing there. I have hope for over there.
Yeah, there we go. Exactly. And there's always hope. I think it doesn't matter how bad things are, there's always hope. Because I think hope is a mindset, being willing to stay positive. Yeah.
So, all right, now I'm going to let you get into your projects all you want, because this is, you're leaving the finance industry, you're going into farming, you're inspired by the woman that you met at Ohio State Fair, and what happened?
So, I don't want to get into too much detail because it goes well, but then it goes pretty dark. So, I sold my house that I had owned in Ohio and bought a farm here with my ex-husband, and that did not go too well. He ended up siphoning a lot of funds and from the business without my knowledge, and selling equipment, and things took a really dark turn. My kids and I ended up in, long and short of it, we ended up in domestic violence shelter, and we were farming while basically homeless for about 2.5 years, and I refused to kind of give up on the dream. It was really challenging. And with the help of a few farmers, I had to move my animals probably 10 times. I was waking up at 4 o'clock. I moved my mushrooms probably like more than 10 times. But I refused to kind of give up on that. And so I lost a lot of my equipment and I lost a lot of my things. And so when we were finally able to buy that property last year, I had already lost pretty much my life savings that I had done with farming, and I was just basically starting over from scratch. It was really, really challenging, to kind of build all of that infrastructure back. But, one of the things that's been this year is just kind of that renewal. And I think one of the things I've been looking at is that I'm starting not just starting over, but I'm starting over from a place of experience. So I get a chance to fix some of the things that I would have wanted to do differently after I built infrastructure the last time. So it was a really sad place, but it's also a really good place. And now all of the hard work that I'm doing, no one can take that away from me. And so, and I think that's the positive thing. I think in the moment, it was really, really challenging because, at one point in time, we were at a domestic violence shelter in Charlotte. I was having to wake up at 3-4 o'clock in the morning, get my kids ready, put them in the car, drive to a farm, get my animals together, do all of my chores, then go back to a truck stop, bathe myself, get my kids to school, and then go to work. So, I did a lot of things to make it happen. And sometimes when you're in that moment, you're just kind of in survival mode and you do whatever it takes to be able to do that. And that's kind of what I did.
I have a thought in my head that I know the shelter you're talking about in Charlotte. Can you name them? Do you mind naming them? Or
Siren House? Yeah. I would say I had a really good experience with Siren House, and so they were very supportive. They really wanted to see me move to the next level and be able to retain my financial independence, and so they encouraged me a lot, and so that was really, really good. I'm super grateful for my job right now. I work for the state of Michigan, so right now I work from home, and so it really allows me. So I wake up probably about 4 o'clock. Some days, if I'm lazy, about 4:30. I will get up, do my chores, then get Dominic ready for 6:30, and then I go to work at 7. So and then I
did not mean to diminish any part of your story, but I know they're an important part of that part of the community, and it needs. I mean, the Eaton County community, they're one of the best shelters there. And
I think they're the best shelter in the area. I'm going to tell you, I don't want to say anything negative about the other shelters, but I'm going to tell you that if I had started at the other shelter, my story would have been very different. Wow. So I'm extremely grateful for them because I think that they allowed me to do that. And one of the things, when I first came in, I was like, well, it's not that he's hit me, but he, was stealing from me and he did all of this emotional abuse. And they were like, validating that, financial and emotional abuse is much more jarring than physical abuse. And so I think one of the things they did was kind of give me the encouragement to be able to kind of continue what I was doing and in a really challenging situation as well. I have a special needs son. My son Dominic has severe autism, and the changes were really, really hard for him, and we were left with none of our things, and so all of the things that he was used to that were part of his routine were just gone, and so there was a lot of behavior that came about. Potty training took a back step, and so we had to do all of those things, but we kind of worked through it because I was determined to be a farmer, and I was determined that no one was going to take that dream away from me. I was on that path, and I was just determined. Yeah.
So there's a lot we didn't talk about in the beginning, and it's spurring so much emotion and passion for me, and towards what you are doing. You're amazing. I mean, I didn't know that you went through that. I'm sorry that you went through that. But the way your mindset is, though, is that I guess it strengthened you. It made you have a different resolve, and even you doubled down on your resolve.
Yes.
And after that, it's just a walk in the park, right? It just gets easier and easier.
Well, I don't know if it's ever a walk in the park because every day there's.
I'm being facetious because I know now.
It is super challenging. That's always challenging. It's the challenges of being a farmer, period, are there. The challenges of being a Black farmer are even greater. And then the challenges of being an organic farmer. As I was telling you earlier, I just had a situation where one of the components of my mushroom substrate was deauthorized. And so now I'm working with my certifier over to try to figure out how I can import mushroom pellets from Canada because the only other place I can get it is in Missouri, and it's going to cost me $463 a pallet just to ship it in. That's not even counting the cost of the product. And so, you always have these challenges. And I think, if you don't develop that strength and resilience, it really, really, your story doesn't really pan out. Yeah.
So one thing that keeps popping in my head when you told me about the trying to get from Canada to Michigan, I know there's a chain of custody that's important in the organic industry for traceability reasons, but I also know that BizConnect in Michigan will help fund projects like this, especially if you're bringing stuff in or shipping out internationally. I'm going to try to help with that.
That would be fantastic, because I know Eric is talking to some of the other organic grain farmers who have had they always had to provide equivalency certificates for to see if they can talk about some of the logistics, because what they want to try to do is help me, which has been great, because I did get a cease and desist, but they gave me 65 days. However, because I'm working on it, they said that they're flexible in extending it if I need, because they know that I can't stop producing mushrooms. And they really want to try to see me. OFA has certified me before, and they walked the journey with me when I was dealing with all of the stuff with my farm. And then when I eventually had to surrender my certificate and starting back. So they're they were also my friends when I was in Ohio. So they're very vested in trying to help me kind of move forward, because they know that I believe in the movement, and I really want to try to, bring organic food in a special way to the Lansing area. So, yeah.
And you said equivalency. It almost triggered me a little bit with my old career. I used to write software for compliance agencies. And in the late 90s, I worked with the National Organic Program and CCOF and all these other certifiers on equivalency.
Equivalency certificates,
Yeah. So if, one inspector inspected and they certified, then the other certification would be accepted, is what I'm trying to explain a little bit to the crowd.
What they are. Oh, yeah. I'm sorry. I talk in jargon. And
no, it's okay.
Yeah.
It's just you said it's tough to be a farmer, which is true. It's tough to be a black-led farmer, which is true. It's organic makes a whole different thing, because there's not just the extra things you have to do. Well, eventually, though, it comes out ahead. But you also got to put up with the traditional farmers that think they think you're weird, or there's stigmas and all these things, right?
I think one of the biggest things is people that say, "Oh, I'm almost organic," but or I'm organic, and that's really hard, because when you look at mushrooms. Mushrooms are grown on the hulls, and as you know, glyphosate is basically sprayed on these hulls to dry them so that they could be taken off of the seed. And so, as you know, mushrooms are bioaccumulators. So these mushrooms are being grown on these glyphosate soaked or Roundup soaked hulls, and they're like, well, I have the same thing because I don't spray my mushrooms, but nobody sprays mushrooms, right, when they're growing, right? But you're growing them on basically Roundup petri dish versus growing it on organic substrate, and then having to kind of source, like American Soy was the only person for soy hulls in the state of Michigan, but they stopped selling it because I was the only person buying it. So all of those things, kind of just basically trying to source all of these different things, and then I was bringing in stuff from Iowa and Missouri, but now I'm working on, trying to kind of clean up that logistic chain and make it more efficient and sustainable. And so that's the exciting thing. So, yeah.
So this in itself is amazing, that you have the organic certification, that you have a farm.
Well, actually, I want to be clear. So I had to surrender my certificate, and right now I'm in process. But because I'm in process, we've been going through this. They were looking through some of my things, and they deauthorized. So it was something that I was using before, but they deauthorized it. And the reason is this, before, when it was authorized, they had looked at the label, and on the label it says 100% forest product. But my reviewer this time actually made the extra step of calling the manufacturer, and the manufacturer said, depending on the moisture level in the wood, they may have to use binder oils, and these oils are non-organic. And so because they're doing it occasionally, that product can't be used for organic production because it's being used as a nutritive source for the mushrooms. And as you know, you can't do that. And so I had to then now find an alternative and receive a cease and desist. So that, but yes, Amy's reminding me not to talk too much about that because she wants me to share the other things. So I apologize.
No problem. No problem. So we'll get off that real quick. So how can people, well, what do we want to talk about? Let's talk about your farm community a little bit. You want to do that?
Yeah. So, you know, I'm in a group, so Lansing area farmer to farmer, and we share, a lot of really good farmers there. So sometimes I'll pop in a lot of farmers that I can kind of reach out and ask ideas, or if I have something going on. But Detroit mushrooms and Zazu mushrooms, we're working together. Although Zazu mushrooms just announced to us that they may be leaving the main scene for that. But it's been really helpful because these guys have a collaborative mindset, and we're all trying to really push the mushroom movement and push the healthy food movement and the local food movement. And so even though we're in close proximity to each other, we really want to try to see each other grow and do really well. So working on really developing and strategies to grow harder to grow strains and things like that. Those are some of the things that we're working on. And so it's really exciting to have people that kind of know what your reality is, and then we have pig farmers like, the guys at Ham Sweet Farm. Sometimes I will reach out to Kate Spinello and I'm like, okay, so Kate, this is going on. Like, I'm doing my fencing on Saturday. I was running through how I was setting up my fencing, and she was sending me all these ideas and things to do. So, we're kind of working together. So even though we're doing the same thing, we're kind of coexisting in a way, because I think that, a rising tide raises all ships. So we want to see all of us do well and be successful in moving forward. Yeah.
So I'm going to share your fence building project right now, the Facebook event.
Yes. So we're building. So we're finally fencing. Yeah, we're finally fencing across the street. I waited a little while because fencing materials have been super expensive this year. So they were almost doubled in cost. So I was waiting and hoping that it would go down in price, but that has not happened. And we're getting close to winter. So this Saturday, we're going to be, not this Saturday, sorry, that's Farmers Market Day. It's this Sunday, we're going to be working on building fence, and I'm going to provide some barbecue. We're going to do pulled pork as well as smoked chicken and smoked mushrooms for the vegans and vegetarians. And so we're going to, come and bring your fencing. You can also bring a side. We're going to be starting at 11 o'clock in the morning. We have to wear protective clothes and boots, of course, because we're going to be tramping in pasture and in woods, as well as the mosquitoes, as you know, are brutal right now. So doing that, but it'll be a lot of fun. It'll be a lot of hard work, and you really help my farm kind of get to the next level. So if that's something, we also have a GoFundMe if you, because one of the things we're doing is really upgrading our mushroom infrastructure. Last year, the greenhouses I was growing in, they were not very efficient for the winter. So working with Detroit mushrooms, Brian McShane has been giving me some ideas, and building a more efficient system for this winter, so that way it's more cost effective, and I have more control over the parameters in my grow room in the winter, which is a challenge in the brutal Michigan winters, especially during the Arctic blast. And so working on that project, and so it'll be exciting. So yeah.
So there's a GoFundMe. There's an event coming up.
Yes.
Amy shared it too. I think I shared it, but should be all right. What else is happening? You're at some farmers market. Where can, if I want to buy something from you, how do I do that?
So we're at the Mason Farmers Market. We're also at the Meridian Market. And so those are some of the big projects we're doing. We're trying to really increase our access to bigger farmers markets. And that comes with its challenges too, because, I've had a situation because an existing vendor is not very happy that I'm there and has made things really challenging for me. And actually, this past Saturday, I had an incident where that particular vendor came up to my booth and was accusing me of unethical behavior and pretending to grow my mushrooms, which is kind of laughable because there are people at my farm all the time and they see my mushrooms. I have volunteers at my farm all the time. Also, I'm an organic farmer. I have to provide records to my certifier during the process so they know what I'm doing. And it was really hard because one of the things is I don't know what the person's motivation for it, but something enabled that person to think that feel comfortable enough to come up to my booth and behave like that and talk loudly in front of customers and other vendors to undermine me. And I think they did it because they think that there's probably going to be little or no consequence. I didn't engage with the person. All I did was ask him to leave on more than one occasion. And then I also presented it to the leadership and said, this has happened. So I'm just going to wait and see what they do. I believe everybody wants to do the right thing. So I'm going to give them a chance to do the right thing. Because I think that there has to be some kind of consequences because basically that's slander. It's kind of has no place in farming. We shouldn't really be coming at each other like that, because one of the things we want to do is make sure we're not challenging the corporate food system and bringing in another cutthroat system that's not really going to increase food accessibility. So that's really our mindset, and that's really what we want to do. The only thing we can do is collaborative farming, and I think that's what the essence of a farmers market is about. Is bringing that together and encouraging and helping other farmers and encouraging them to grow. I think one of the markets that we were at, we had a guy next to us selling microgreens, and we were both selling the same product, and we had a good conversation. We talked about it, gave encouragement to each other. And I think that that's kind of how it should be. If you have confidence in what you're growing and what you're doing, there shouldn't be an issue with that kind of back and forth. But yeah.
I'm going to ask you just a straightforward question right now. Do you think of all the factors he could be complaining about, is it the fact that you were an organic farmer, a woman farmer, or a black farmer, or something else?
I think the concern for that particular person is the competition, but I don't want to go into too much detail because I don't want to say anything specific enough that it will point back to the particular person. Because the one thing I don't want to do is do the same thing to him that he has done to me. I think that, and from an integrity standpoint, I don't want to kind of engage in that kind of thing to basically try to undermine him in the same way that he has done me, because it's not something that's good, and I think as farmers we all work too hard, and I don't want to do that to another person. So yeah,
I love your positivity, and I love, one of my favorite quotes is by Chief Seattle. Man did not weave the web of life. He is merely a strand in it. Anything he does to the web, he does to himself. And
yes.
Excuse me, I'm quoting him directly. I would have used person or something like that. But that there's a negative part of that and there's a positive part of that. If
yes.
you do something negative to the web, you're doing something negative to yourself. If you do
yes.
something positive to the web, you're doing something positive to yourself. And you just did the positive thing, and now our web's stronger despite that jackass.
I'm sorry, I shouldn't laugh. So
no.
yeah.
So okay, what you and I talked before the show about equity in land ownership, equity in food, equity in almost everything. But what? Let's talk about that a little bit, because you have some thoughts. You had a grant that was pretty tough. You had, or some help.
Yes, describe it. So I would say that I feel like the land access, especially. So everybody's like, oh, why are there only 8 black farms or in the state of Michigan? Like, why are there, And the thing is, if you look at the FSA program, so when we're buying our original farm, even though the collateral and the financing, as well as the proof of how we were going to repay the loan, came from me, and it's a BIPOC grant, but they're expecting you to have 3 years of farm management experience or 3 years of farm ownership. The problem is there are only 8 Black farms. So how many people are really going to have? So that criteria has basically excluded more than 99.9% of applicants. So I think if you have a program and you're saying that the goal is to improve or increase, but your policy creates obstacles, you're creating the semblance of help, but none of the actual help. So because how are you changing it? Your policy has to be reflective of your goal. And if your policy precludes 99.9% of applicants, you don't really have an equitable policy. I mean, let's just put it out there. Okay. Yeah. And so I ended up having to use the fact that my ex-husband was a legacy farmer, and that's the only reason we were able to get the loan. Right. But look at that. There's a legacy farmer. This happened. And then who's still farming? I am, right? And so you have to look at that. That criteria is not necessarily reflective or indicative of true farming success or passion. And so there needs to be different criteria if we really want to change, because these programs have been in place for 20 years and there's still only 8 Black farms in the state of Michigan. So obviously your policy is failing. So who's reviewing that?
Spot on, number one. We got to go back and clarify a word real quick. You said legacy farmer. We used that the other day on the show for the cannabis industry, and the legacy farmers and market there. But I don't know if you're talking about that, but a viewer that watched that show might be thinking that. So can you clarify or don't want to clarify?
So legacy farmers basically get excluded from the requirement and the criteria if you've grown up on a farm or your family was farming and you grew up around farming. So then that counts as your experience. And so you don't have to meet that little criteria. But with the few number of Black farms, how many Black farmers are really going to have that?
Right. Well, if you're, none are going to have or very few are going to have legacy.
Yes, and that's what I'm saying. You're excluding 99.9% of them, and so that grant is definitely needs some review, and somebody needs to look into that to see really what are we doing to basically change that, And then of course, like with the whole thing with the land access, when we finally bought that property that we did in Dansville, I would say 99.9% of my neighbors are great, but I had this one neighbor. I'd not lived there a week and a half, and she came over. And just like that guy, came over and said to me, she didn't know why a person like me would think it's a good idea to move there. And you wonder, people are like, well, why didn't you say anything to her? How did she have the confidence to do that? And you say, well, how did that guy have the confidence to come over to my booth and say that, right? What makes them? Because it's that privilege. It's that feeling that something that I have makes me able to subordinate your rights. And you don't deserve those rights, those basic rights as a human being, because something I have makes me more privileged or more able to have those rights. And that gives them that confidence to be able to behave in that manner,
So you've got a neighbor, you've got a person at the farmer's market acting that way. Do you think it would be first of all, do you think it would be easy for, let's say, a young Black man or woman from the east side of Lansing here to go get a job at a farm, and especially a farm like that where these two are associated with?
I don't, and that's a thing. And that's one of the things that I want to really change. My goal in the future is to really kind of change the landscape. And I know Project Red has been out there. They've been doing great work where they bring kids from the inner city and they have them visit farms. But eventually I'd like to have a farm where I have an educational aspect where we can bring in kids from the inner city and they can see someone like them in a non-urban farm setting, in a rural setting that's being successful, and to really give them an opportunity to be able to visualize and envision themselves as that being a possible future for themselves, because I think it's really hard to sometimes visualize yourself if you're basically seeing someone that doesn't look necessarily like you, doesn't necessarily, you can't relate to their background. So it makes it kind of challenging for them to really see themselves. And I really want to try to change that. So because I think that's an important aspect, that envisioning is an important aspect of increasing the number of Black farms in the state of Michigan. And that's central for me.
I always talk about believable opportunity and how important it is in our community. When you have like a junior achievement, white guy in a suit coming and talking to a bunch of Black and brown kids about being an accountant, all those Black and brown kids are thinking, I don't know anybody who's an accountant. This is some white boy shit. I'm sorry. But
yes, and that's, you see, that's exactly it.
And I think I am, I've never used this word on my show. This is going to be a special show. I am flabbergasted that there are only 8 Black farms in Michigan. I had no idea.
We had thought that there were 9, but actually one of the Black farms, we found out that the black person is the manager, but not the owner.
Trying to get in on that grant money or something, right?
I don't know what I'm not trying to start any mess, but hopefully that has changed, because I know that there are some little pop-ups that are starting to happen. I know that like Michaela Roden actually just leased her farm to another Black woman, and I'm really excited. I'm going to be meeting her soon, so really excited about that. I just really wanted to see that change, and so hopefully the next year that's going to be that reality. Maybe we might double the numbers. Let's go for a big 20 out of 50. Now, to put in perspective, there are over 57,000 farms in the state of Michigan.
Well, that's not a better perspective, though. All right. Yeah. How can people help? How could I help get to 16 or 20? Let's go for 20.
I think one of the things that we really, land access is the bigger. So I just actually participated in a group of, I don't know what you call it, a focus group with the New York State University. They were doing a federal study with Black organic farmers. So I got to meet with other farmers from Georgia, California, New York. But I was the Black organic farmer from the Midwest, and they were just talking to them. What are some of the challenges you think that would be for another Black? And the biggest thing we said was land access and financing access. Because when you go to like a traditional farm loan place like Greenstone, they're looking for farming experience. And so, there's just so many obstacles that, because there's not been that development, so when you talk about the privilege, people always talk about privilege and what does that mean? That privilege is having that legacy that allows you to basically bypass a lot of things that another person wouldn't be able to. And that's the privilege. And I think, so you're like, well, why don't you just go out here and do business loan? Because I don't have somebody that's in farming that could co-sign a farm loan for me, And so these are the things that basically prevent. And so I think working on legislature, contacting your representative and making sure that they're really being conscientious about, how are they impacting the future of BIPOC farmers? How are they strengthening the existing BIPOC farms to allow them to be able to survive? And then also challenging these farmers markets and all of those things to see, what are you doing in terms of not just Black vendors, but how are you strengthening Black farmers to encourage them to give them a face at your farmers market and have them feel secure,
So, I've got a couple kids that young gentlemen. I call them kids because I'm 55, yeah. So I get to call everybody kids now as of a few days ago. It's in the rules. I get cards and everything. So, but Steve Manning, for example, is starting a company that is an organic ice cream company, a vegan option,
Oh, wow.
and he's right here on the east side. And his whole motivation was looking at the baby food companies, and there's no Black-owned baby food company in America. And in our preparation, you and I today, you said something very important that really resonated with me in that subject. And the food supply is not controlled by Black people,
It is not, and I
right?
think one of the things is that if we're wanting to strengthen Black communities, I think that the food system needs to be decolonized. I'm not saying that from that, I just think that people, there has to be adequate representation, and then also when you look at the inner city, you see liquor stores here, liquor stores here, liquor stores there, everywhere, but they're not supermarkets. And the supermarkets are convenience stores that don't have really good food options. And so you're like, well, how can we change that? And what do we do? It's by giving the food power to the people, right? It's to give the food power to the people. Teach them how to grow food, teach them how to do this. And I think that that's one of the things that we really need to do to basically change that, to basically see food in a different way. And I think that that's super important. And I think I know that I'm going in a rural setting, but I really want to try to be a part of changing that. And that's super important to me. And I'm very humbled to basically, because I know I'm coming on the backs of all the people who've done the work before me, like Malik Keeney down in Detroit, who does a lot of work. So I'm grateful for those people that have opened doors for me, and I want to be a door opener as well.
We're gonna tip this bus over. This is a very, very big passion of mine. Very big passion. I mean, we're right on the east side, right across from Sparrow. I've got chickens. My whole yard is food. I collect my own water. I've got compost. I'm gonna worm farm this year. And this is so super important because, if they control our food, they control us.
That's exactly it. Oh my goodness. That's exactly my philosophy, is that it, and that's one of the reasons why I think it's so important for farmers to band together, because, one of the things I actually, Brian McShane was talking about that. He was saying that, the only way we're going to be able to really survive and become efficient is if we band together and we collaborate. And I was like, oh, that's awesome. Yeah, that's true. Because, he's like, we come together and we strengthen each other. So by yourself, you're vulnerable. But if you're in a group, you become less vulnerable, and even the way we kind of try to figure out harder to grow strains, because some mushrooms are a little more complex. So now you have one person that's growing it in this environment, the other person's looking, and we're looking at the different things and how the different environment. And so then that allows you to then start to think, and okay, well, what do I need to do to change about my environment to be able to have the successes, or what do I need to fix and those things. And so I think it's important to have those collaborative relationships. Yeah.
Octavia S. Butler. You know who that is?
I do not know.
Uh-oh. I got to send you a couple books.
Are you book shaming me? Are you book shaming?
Oh, am I? No,
I'm just teasing
not.
you. I'm just teasing you. I'm teasing you. I'm not.
No.
I don't know that I'm that sensitive.
I did not mean it like that. My motivation about urban gardening, or urban farming comes from my grandfather, but I read her books during COVID, and she made me triple down on it, because resiliency and food supply. Yeah, I know what I don't need. I don't need to order anything from Amazon tomorrow, but I need to eat tomorrow.
Yes.
And that's a fact. And without having that resiliency to be able to know how to grow your own food and farm and do all of these things, we're going to be vulnerable to people that we don't want to be vulnerable to.
That's
no matter who we are.
Exactly this. Exactly. I think you control the food, you control the water supply, you control the people. And I think
You
that's the, and
don't get me
that's
going on water, because then we'll be here for like 6 more days.
so so you get that, like, that's the whole thing. And I think that, one of the things is that's where, why land access is so important, and the disenfranchising of the Native American people. I think a big part of that was, the pulling away of their land. I could go, okay, I'm not going to go there. All right, let's talk. What's the next question? There's so many things that I could say,
Well,
yeah.
Yeah, that's the problem with someone like you, someone that's so badass as a guest, is that we could talk for 3 or 4 hours here.
Oh, Jerry, I feel the same way about you.
And you and I don't even really know each other. This is the first time we've ever talked, right?
Absolutely, it is. I just met you like probably an hour ago.
Yes. I just want to. I think this is who also said earlier. So Barla, I don't have my glasses on. Bast, I think. Maybe start with a local kids club to volunteer at your farm to increase exposure to Black farms. My kids will sign up. We do need change.
I would love that. I would love that.
That's something I might be able to help with. I have a bunch. See, I got these kids in love with these chickens. So these kids all over this neighborhood every day take a walk and they want to see the chickens. So they're seeing that. They're seeing the food growing. They're seeing this stuff. Let's do step 2. Let's get them out to a farm.
Absolutely. And that's the thing. I think one of the things I do want to do is try to take all of so right now I grow my mushrooms outside, but my lab and my incubation room is in my house. Next year, my project is to bring all of that outside so that I could bring lots of people in, because it does become limiting because of the fact that my lab. So I have should be a dining room in my house, and the entire thing is a lab. I'll send you pictures so you can see what I mean. So, but you have to walk through my entire house and stuff like that. And I'll be honest, it does get really hard to keep up with everything with farming and all of the things that I do. But but I would love to do that. And then maybe I can teach them some of the important aspects of mushroom growing, teaching them, how to grow pigs and stewardship. We have goats, we have turkeys. So, just kind of, I'd love to have the kids. So that would be nice. Yeah, that's a long shot. That would be amazing.
Well, you and I should try to talk a little bit. And if we can figure it out without me, that's great. If I can help, I would love to help. It's one of my top priorities, is exactly what you're talking about.
Yes. And that actually was something that's a dream of mine and has been a dream of mine. So I think if there's a way we can make it a reality, that would be fantastic.
I think about you as one of 2 Black women in Michigan that's a farmer. You must be the only organic farmer, or are both of you organic?
Well, actually, there are 2 organic black organic farms.
Okay.
Well, at least people that are certified or working towards certification. So Groundswell Farm, and Zealand, and myself.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. But is it different in the South or the West or the East or the Plains?
There is not. It is not, especially in terms of organic farming. Like I said, I was just in that focus group with the New York University for the federal government, and it was really disheartening to kind of hear some of the things, And actually, I know I'm on the board for the Michigan Organic Food and Farm Association, so MOFA, and one of our newsletters is talking about the systemic pulling back of the land from the Black farmers and how the change happened and why we're in the position we're in right now. So there's a book called, I believe it's Bone and, oh my goodness, I'm forgetting it. But the fact is, check out the newsletter from MOFA. They're going to be talking about that and it's going to share how they came in and there were all these Black farmers in Michigan, and they put laws in place where they had to come up with these large amounts of money or they would lose their land. And so a lot of Black farmers then were pulled off the land and lost land that they had been working for years. And that's how that became the basically disenfranchised. Oh, bone and sinew. of the bone and sinew of the land, is the book, and it talks about how that Michigan policy changed and basically pulled back land from all of these Black farmers, and so I think that's a big thing. And I'm super proud of MOFA for doing that. And I think there's a lot more progress in the South for organic Black farmers, but there are just not a lot of Black organic farmers in the U.S. And so I'm kind of really happy to be part of that. And I really respect the organic process, and a lot of people think it's a gimmick, but I really respect the organic process, and I respect what we do, and I think I like having that third party person to kind of go over, and be able to tell a client, well, this is what this person is doing, and I like the fact that OFA is very thorough, and they really want to be changed, not just slapping the organic certification on there. They want to be part of really changing the food movement. Yeah.
I want to, I'm going to put an Every Damn Day episode in the comments. It's with a gentleman named Jake Lewin. He was in the organic movement for a very, very long time. He got me in the room with the USDA, and when the National Organic Program was written, before 1998, I think it was, there wasn't a federal program that anybody could say their strawberries were organic.
Yes.
The process that you go through to prove that you are organic is ridiculously hard. And I'm not saying anything bad about the program. Monsanto can spray whatever poison they want. They have to gear up and put on masks and breathalyzer or all this stuff, right, to keep them alive while they're spraying these chemicals on our food. And you have to fill out more paperwork and provide more records than they do. And it's an embarrassment. And the food industry, not the food industry, the chemical industry has bought our agriculture from us, or from our country. They have sold us to them.
Yeah. Well, look at the fact that Villasek is now the head of the USDA, the guy who basically is like Mr. Monsanto's wife. I'm sorry, I shouldn't have said that, but he
yes,
is.
You should. We got to swear a lot more when we say this. We've got to pound our fists, and we've got to show up with our pitchforks at the gates of this hell.
And when you talk about paperwork, like with my mushrooms, I have to basically record every block that I inoculate that comes out of my lab has to be recorded. I have to record what date I put it in my incubation room. I have to record when I pull it out of my incubation room. I have to record when it's on the shelf. Then once I harvest, I have to weigh and record what I harvest. When I take it to market, I have to weigh what I take to market, and then I have to weigh what I bring back. Yep. So they can trace what I have brought from my farm and what's not from my farm, and so these are the things, that kind of accountability and traceability of your food is what you get with the organic certification. Because
it's for real. It used to be a gimmick.
Yeah.
But that's because people would stamp it on and lie about it and all of that. And
I think you're really hard to do now, because it would be really hard to do now just because the amount of vigilance that they're doing. And I think that's a good thing. It's harder for me as a farmer, that's for sure. And some days I balk at it and I complain, but because I had a really tough reviewer this time, and he has gone into a lot more detail than anybody else. And he was a newer guy, and I was like, oh, this guy's giving me such, but we had a good conversation, and now that I understand kind of what he's doing and why he's doing it, he said, I want you to be the strongest organic farmer that there is. I want to make sure we've gone through everything so that next year when we come along, we know exactly what we need to do. And that, that we know the kind of food that you're putting out, and we can look anybody in the eye and say, this is really what she's doing. And this is how we know what she's doing. And I think that's important. So, yeah.
So I was in compliance and certification for 35 years. Most of that time I was an auditor or inspector in some role. I might have been a CEO of a software company, but I still went out there and did audits and all of that. And what I used to say is that the beauty of the deer is in the strength of the wolf. So if they're
Yes.
chasing you, forget those Monsanto guys. They're so lazy. They're actually got their land addicted to this chemical that they'll never be able to get away from for at least 5 to 10 years, right? Is that the
I don't even know what it's 3 years. There's a 3-year transition for land.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
It used to be 5, or maybe some places they still.
So it's a 3-year transition. But if I'm pretty sure it's a 3-year transition. I think it used to be 5, and 3. I'm trying to remember because I'm trying to remember what the 5-year rule was. I know that there was a 5-year rule, but I think it changed that it's a 3-year transitional period because like actually the land I have across the street, the last time chemical was sprayed on it is 2019. So now it's transitional land. And so the next time when I can certify it fully, it would be 2022. So next year. Yeah.
All right. So there's so much to talk about, and I hope we pick up a few more of these things as we go down here. Yeah. But what do you do every damn day to push this amazing mission or 5,000 missions? I don't know how many it is forward.
I think it's just getting up every single day because, and choosing to, no matter what happens that day, to just move forward. Like, because you have those challenging days. Last week or 2 weeks ago, my nozzles were clogged in my humidification system in my greenhouses. I turned off the valve and to take off the nozzles and forgot to turn off the pump. And so I had 5,000 PSI of pressure pulling in this little tube. The tube pulled up like a balloon and popped. So, I popped my, so those are things. And some days you're like, oh my goodness, how did I make those mistakes? And there's so many things like working in the Arctic blast and having to take care of your animals. And, those things, there's so many things that come and challenges that come, or like dealing with other vendors or dealing with other things, so many things that come up but you have to make a choice. It's kind of like marriage. I think a good marriage is like that. No matter what happens, that you choose to move forward and you choose to work it out and work through it. And I think that's so I guess I'm kind of married to the farming. So, like it's just choosing to be able to, every day make that choice because I want that the next black kid or the black or brown kid that wants to be a livestock farmer doesn't see me as someone that gave up. They could see, okay, she went through all of those things, but she never gave up. And that's what so I want to be able to be that person for the next person so that they can move forward. Because I want to in some small way make it easier for the next person.
I don't think your way is going to be small.
Thank you so much, Sherry.
I think it's going to be pretty significant. You can just, because there's the surface, right? And there's everything below the surface. And you just showed us a little bit under the surface with, talking about your marriage, your son, and everything. I mean, this is your second try at the farm because of all this other BS.
Yes.
But I don't even know everything about every step of your journey has been, I can't pronounce this word right, but I'm going to try, Herculean, right? It's like Hercules just going over every single obstacle. You're never going to fail. I'm with you, man. Where are we going? I will follow you.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that. I think it's, it's just that whole thing we were talking about earlier is hope. I think hope is such an important aspect. I think if you have hope, you can do anything, right? Because no matter what is happening, if you have hope, and I think hope is a mindset, that being said, sometimes I lose hope and I vent to my friends.
So the first thing I'm going to do is rearrange my show and follow you that way.
Let's talk.
Because you know what? I daisy chain these shows together, and I asked yesterday's guest has a question for you, and you're going to ask tomorrow's guest, right?
Yes.
But let's just go let's just go real quick and we'll get back to hope in a second.
Yes.
Yesterday, Casey Carter, Kevin Carter from Hood Illustrated, his question to you, he's also an amazing person, by the way, is as a minority business owner, what obstacles have you had to endure? And you already talked about most of them, but I bet you, of the 3, 5, 10 that you've talked about, there's 100 more that you're not talking about.
Absolutely.
And, I know that a lot of the community looks at, when this happens to Breonna Taylor, this happens to George Floyd, ... 1,000 times, the community turns to the Black woman and says, we need your help. We need you now. Help us not be racist. Help us, love and guard our children. Help us march. Help us do all of this. All these responsibilities are put on you. I know this from talking to 300 and some people about what's happening right now. And you got all that and all this. And you're a badass.
Thank you for saying that. Sometimes I don't feel that way. I will say though, my son Dominic is, and my daughter. But Fifi helps a lot. But Dominic especially, my son has autism, and I've seen how much he has grown and just thrived. And I think dignity in work is such an important aspect, especially for children with special needs. And he takes such pride at the farmers market in giving change and interacting with people and feeding the animals. And he knows the different things. These days when we go to the lab, he knows, he comes in and he's turning on the laminar flow hood and he's getting out the gloves and he goes with the thing with the rubbing alcohol. He's basically scrubbing in and then he hands it to me. So he knows what we need to do. And I think that has given him so much confidence. Yeah. And I've seen him kind of grow and develop. And I hope eventually also to be able to employ some of the special needs kids to help out at the farm, to kind of give them that experience and to be able to kind of give them that dignity too. Because I've seen how it has really caused Dominic to just thrive. Yeah. And I'm grateful for that. I'm super grateful because I know not every special needs family or parent has that. And so I'm super grateful for that farming has been able to give that great gift to my family.
Is he verbal or nonverbal? And I mean to the rest of us, because to you understand every single thing he says or does.
So he's considered nonverbal because he basically only talks when he needs to, and he doesn't really talk a lot. Mm-hmm. So he's got a few sentences. He doesn't really have social conversation. So he doesn't really. So yeah, he's considered nonverbal, but he has got the biggest heart you ever do, and I mean he loves the pigs. He's so good with the pigs, so and the turkeys, I think sometimes freak him out because turkeys will follow you everywhere, right? So we have some turkeys, they're in kind of a wood and native plant habitat, and as soon as you come they're like whoa! And it's a little overwhelming for him, but we do different things, but he goes in, he harvests the mushrooms, he's helping me with all of those things, and it really just kind of gives me such joy to see how much he's enjoying it. And he's also a creature of routine, so he's like, oh, microgreens, we need to plant the microgreens, and so he's the one doing a lot of those things. So I'm super grateful for that. My daughter's done such an amazing job at the farmers market, and she's even helped to train other people. She was working the farmers market with me, so because when we were kind of situating ourselves, we were selling through Cherry Capital and selling to other high-end restaurants. Actually, Iron Chef Michael Simon used to buy our pork for his restaurant Roast in Detroit. So but then we started breaking into the farmers market and brought my children into that. And it's really just awesome when I get that feedback. People are like, oh, your daughter's at the Mason Market and she does such a great job, and she does such a great job with customer service, and she's so passionate about food, and she knows she can tell me how to do what she does with this mushroom and things like that. And I think it's so wonderful to kind of have that. Yeah.
Can I take a time out for a second and just show you? Thank you for being an amazing, powerful Black woman, for inspiration for all of us. And I could definitely say for a second, if we could also cross off the word Black and woman and just put person there, because you are amazing. Don't cry. You're going to make me cry, and then we're going to be crying, and it's going to take a lot longer to do the show. But, the fight is the right fight, and you're amazing for doing it. And then on the farm side, best mushrooms.
Thank you.
And then Cassandra, I guess it was when I said that there's nothing small about you and what you're doing. And it's amazing. And I had no idea. I always told you, ever since we started communicating, I'm super excited to talk to you. And, it starts out about you're an organic farmer. And then what? She's the only two Black women farmers. And what? And it's just gotten bigger and bigger and bigger about the amazing work that you're doing. And I hope that that your children know that this is amazing in all kinds of aspects. I mean, cross off all the little ways they want to slice all of us people up into white and black and gay and straight and whatever. Take all of that away for a second. The work that you're doing to make us a better community, a stronger community, is super important. And start adding all these other things, and you're amazing. You're amazing.
Thank you for saying that. Some days it's when you're in the moment and you're in the thick of it, it's hard to see that, right? Because you see all of the little imperfections, and you see all of the things that you need to improve, and so you get bogged down in those improvements. And I do tend to be a perfectionist, I think, sometimes. So I've had to. I think farming has been really great in terms of teaching me to release control and be able to go with the flow. Because if you are a control freak, I don't think you could farm, because literally every day you think you have control of one thing, it goes completely south, and you just have to try to control things the best you can and manage things the best you can. And really that's it. It's just putting one foot in front of the other, yeah.
So I said earlier, I'm an urban farmer. I'm going to take that all back and say I'm just an urban hack. Okay. Cause I can't say I'm a farmer in the same realm that you can. But talking about that, I've got these Jerusalem artichokes. They're kin to the sunflower, and on the top of them was all these aphids. And
oh my goodness.
I'm like, all right,
Bugs.
What's going on? What am I doing wrong? All of this. How did they get up there? Why are they getting up there like that on this plant? And I had this. I want to say old. I shouldn't say it, but she's an old Southern woman, came by the other day, and she told me why. There's ants that herd the aphids up there, and they farm them to milk the artichoke, the Jerusalem artichoke.
Oh my goodness.
Then they put their tranquilizer feet on them and tranquilize them, tear off their wings, and take all their honeydew, and then herd them back up to get, and the ants are farming the aphids.
Oh my goodness, that's so marvelous. That's so, now that's the kind of thing that I would think is so incredibly fascinating.
It is.
So to me, that is so fascinating. And I think that's why, oh my goodness, that's pretty amazing. Because you see, that's what I love about farming. You find all those things, like even rotational grazing, understanding how multi-species multi-species rotational grazing works and impacts the ground cover and improves the soil, and it's been kind of a pet peeve of mine because my pigs have been kind of stuck in one little paddock for a while. And I know that's not the best thing environmentally. I would love them to be out there, changing the world in one ground cover at a time, but and rejuvenating ancient seed beds and things like that. But I think those things, like you talk about ants farming aphids, I would watch that for hours. I would be like, oh my goodness, that is so cool. I think that's that's awesome. And those are the things. That's the science aspect of farming that I don't know, that just thrills me. That's amazing. That's amazing.
Well, what made me think about it was, we go through life trying to predict everything and trying to be there and prepared for every single thing. And if you just did what nature did, you just go with the flow, and whatever happens, you just kind of deal with. And I mean, it's shocking to me the how much I do not understand about absolutely anything.
Oh. And that's the same thing. And I think especially with anything, with the livestock, with the mushrooms, it's like every day I find something else that, oh my goodness, I have no idea what to do. Thankfully, this year we've had a lot of bug pressure, especially with something called the pleasing fungus beetle. But I don't know why they call it pleasing. That's actually the name of it, the pleasing fungus beetle. And it's really, really bad with the mushrooms. But I was able to get a neem oil spray. So you do to 1 gallon of water, you do 2 tablespoons of organic neem oil and 2 tablespoons of Castile soap, and put it in a fogger, and you kind of go through and just kind of working through and those things. But I'd love to have, that's the thing, is that the wisdom of the old people, I'd love to have someone that has that kind of thing, because how would you have known kind of stuff that you just don't learn in books, so yeah.
Do you want to hear another thing she taught me?
Yeah, I do.
Or no, she didn't teach me it. When I looked this up on YouTube, because I was like, bullshit, that's not happening. Aphids are born pregnant. They already have a baby in them when they're born.
Oh my goodness.
That was kind of strange to me too.
That is super strange. Yes. But it's fascinating. You see how nature is just, there's so many layers. It's like every time you peel one layer of the onion, there's another layer beneath it. Yeah.
They're so far ahead of us.
Yes, they are.
Okay, tomorrow on the show, I've got Liano. He's with the Progressive Solidarity Summit. So he's trying to bring all these progressive groups together to start fighting for what's right, in my opinion, at least. What question would you like to ask him?
I'd like to ask him, what are they doing to, from a legislative standpoint, to help BIPOC farmers with land access and financial aspect and access, and how are they targeting the people, the representatives to basically trying to change the legislature that's so oppressive and non-conducive to BIPOC land access.
I wish you had a food truck, because they're looking for a food truck for the event on October 2nd.
I don't, but I would love to.
I think that's such an important question, and I think it's on the radar at some levels. But you see, there's so many inequities happening right now. Whether it, as marijuana becomes legal, and the cannabis industry and the licenses that are given out are given to the corporations from Denver and California, and all the guys from the legacy market, like I was saying earlier, are, they're still in jail. Yes. And now these other guys are getting rich off from the industry that they helped build, and it's bullshit. And you see that.
I agree with that.
I mean, I think about in the tech world, how if I'm a tech entrepreneur, a black tech entrepreneur, how am I going to get the backing of an investor or a bank or somebody, if I don't have my dad's money or, 30 years experience in the tech industry where I can, those inequities are everywhere. But I think the one that scares me the most is the one in your space, the land inequity. What happens when Monsanto owns all of our land, when Nestle owns all of our water, when oil companies can do whatever they want on top and below our soil? We're screwed.
Bill Gates is actually the largest owner of farmland in the U.S.
I hope he's protecting it.
But he's actually not. I don't think that he's protecting it. I could be wrong, but my understanding is that basically he's just.
All right. Windows is canceled. The show's over. I got to shut down my computer.
I don't think he's protecting it. I think it's a matter of controlling the food chain, but I don't know enough, but I don't have much faith that it's being used for positive farming. And to be able to get that. And so you have these large tracts of land that these guys are coming in and winning an auction and bidding and basically controlling the food supply chain. Then they're controlling the processing plants for meat. So everything is being controlled, and then you have these smaller things. That's actually, I was just talking to Eric Pulowski of OFA about that the other day, and we were talking about how can we strengthen the smaller processes so that they don't disappear. How do you do that?
We decentralize everything.
Decentralize and decolonize everything. I'm all about that. I'm all about that. Yeah. So yeah. So. Yeah.
Happiness, sadness, joy, hope, and or love. Which word or words would you like to talk about?
Hope. It's always hope. I think that the biggest thing, you're talking about, going through the trials, is that no matter what happens, if you have hope. Now, that being said, I just did want to say that there are days where I'm not hopeful. Actually, last week, I think I sent a really venti text to my mushroom buddy saying how much I hate farming some days. And I just feel like, oh my goodness, because I had repaired the compression fitting for my humidifier and it popped out again. And I was like, oh my goodness, really? This is not what I need. And so, but I think if you kind of go through this thing and you vent and then you move on and you say, no matter what, I'm just going to put my foot forward and I'm going to do the next thing. So I don't have to do a big thing, but I'm going to do the next thing. It's going to keep me moving forward. And I think that that's an important aspect of hope that's important for our survival. And I think if we're going to be able to be change makers, because wherever there's change, there's always difficulty and obstacles. Because if it was easy, the change would have happened already, right? So if you're being a change maker, you're going to be going through obstacles. And so being willing and ready to go through and go over those obstacles, I think is key. Yeah.
So I want to say something about hope that you made me feel earlier. And you were talking about the neighbor who was harassing you, and you were talking about your neighbor who was like, you got to get stronger. You got to get better.
Oh, yes.
And I assume that neighbor's white.
It is. So I would say 99% of my neighbors are really, really great. I have John Dietz, who's to the left of me, who owns DF Seeds in Dansville. He has been amazing. He's done a lot of amazing work for Project Red, and he's just really big on wanting to try to increase the BIPOC presence in farming and increasing farmland access. So when he met me and I moved there and I told him what I was doing, he was so excited. He's like, oh my goodness, what are the chances I have somebody like that moving next to me? And so he started canvassing the neighborhood and introducing me to everyone. And then we have John Waffle, who owns Sunshine Landscaping, who's down the road from me. He leased me the land across the street, helps me with equipment, gives me advice and stuff like that. And he was the one that said to me when everything was going down, where my neighbor was making all these false reports. I had oh my goodness, animal control or the police over my place all the time. He came over and he said, you got to develop a thicker skin. He's like, if you're going to survive this, you just have to keep moving forward no matter what. You just have to develop. You can't let these things break you. You have to make them make you stronger. And I remember him standing there and telling me that, and then that was when he shared with me that, he did not come from a place where he had land access, but he was determined to change his life, and he did that. And so it was really impressive. And he said, that's why I want to make sure that you kind of stay there and you survive. I want to see you do better and do and be able to fulfill your dream. And John Deese has been so amazing. Like every time things would go south, he and his wife Sandy have just been really, really great. Even when earlier this year, which is something that happens all the time with other farmers, my piglets got out and they got into other neighbor's house, yard, and they were making this big deal, and they were carrying out John, and Sandy went over there and talked to them and was able to kind of smooth things over. And so it's great to have that. If I didn't have that support network, it would have made it really hard for me to be there. So all of those things, I think I'm a firm believer that no matter how dark it becomes, there's always a glimmer of light. You have to look for it. And sometimes you have to look outward to see it, but there's always a glimmer of light.
Does your strength give you hope, or does your hope give you strength?
I think my hope gives me strength. Because I think I wouldn't have strength if I didn't have hope. If I didn't really think that there was a way to fix it or to kind of move forward, I don't think I could have. So I think without that hope, I don't think I would be able to have the strength to move forward, because some days it does become crushing almost when things go wrong. And so, but you have to kind of basically pull yourself up by the bootstraps and stand up again. And that's the hope that allows you to do that, because you know that there's a possibility of change, and there's a possibility of difference, and there's possibility of new things. Yeah.
I'm trying hard to end the show before I cry. Trying super hard. Did we forget to talk about anything?
I don't know. I'm going to talk to Amy, because Amy is like the tiki girl. She's like, when we were starting, she said, you only have 30 minutes with him, right? So you only have 30 minutes.
You schedule a part 2 after the building.
Yeah. So she said, do you want to do a part 2 after the fence building?
Yeah, let's do an encore. That's what I've been calling them. We'll do it later.
Okay, that's
definitely want to do that.
Nice.
Thank you so very much. You are, to me, you're a rock star. You're a badass. I know that you are a wonderful mother. I already know that. And we didn't talk a lot about that. We're not friends like that. I'm sorry if I'm out of place.
Oh, no, that's okay.
I already know.
You for saying that.
And yeah, I'm honored to have you on the show. And is there something you'd like to take us out with?
Thank you. So just if anybody wants to join us, we don't have a lot of help this Sunday. And if we get more help with the fencing project, it will go a lot faster. So if anybody has any time and is willing to help us, even for a couple hours, and then also to follow us on Instagram and Facebook, and, to be supportive, like us, share us, and just be out there. So I think that's the big thing, is to try to help continuing to strengthen us so we can keep going and moving forward, because, we're living the dream. So
I'm not paying attention like I should be, because
and then also, like, if you feel inclined to contribute to our GoFundMe, that would be great. But I think the biggest thing I would like to leave out is that if you find someone who wants to be a farmer, or a BIPOC kid that wants to be a farmer, providing encouragement and working, but we would just really love to, I don't know, be the change. That's all I want to say, is be the change. It doesn't matter. It doesn't have to be a big thing, because I'm a firm believer that droplets make the ocean, right? So do those small things.
Drops of water make rivers are made by drops of water.
Yes, rivers are made. Yes, absolutely. So be the change. Even if you think you're just a tiny speck, that tiny speck is enough to change.
And I love that actionable advice right now. Encourage a BIPOC kid to be a farmer, to get his hands dirty, to understand where the food comes from and all the amazing things you're doing. I'm super excited. We're going to
Thank
work
you.
together. We're going to do
Thank
something.
you. Thank you. Teach your children about food. Teach your children about food and where that food comes from.
Okay. Well,
Yes.
teach your children, your brother, your uncles. Nobody
Yes.
knows where food comes from anymore.
That's true. Yeah.
So, great job. Thank you so very much.
Thank you so much. Yes.
All right. All right, everyone. Tomorrow at 2, we will have the progressives on here talking about all the good stuff they better start doing, because you Democrats ain't doing shit yet. So, all right, y'all. See you later.